Thank you, Gail, and thank you, National Seniors, for inviting us to present at this forum. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Australian Government, who, being the first in the world to identify dementia as a national health priority for people over 65, and has actually funded this particular program. So it's called Your Brain Matters. It's a little bit fancy, so I hope I get it right. Okay. All right, so this presentation is called Your Brain Matters, and it's an evidence-based program supported by scientific research. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of what that is. But firstly, here's Ita.
Hello, I'm Ita Buttrose, President of Alzheimer's Australia. Nowadays, most of us are aware of our physical health. But what use is a healthy body if we don't have a healthy brain? Alzheimer's Australia has developed a world-leading evidence-based program called Your Brain Matters, which confirms that if you're looking after your brain, body and heart, you're well on your way to having a healthy brain and reducing your risk of dementia. There are more than 320,000 Australians with dementia. By 2050, it's projected that there will be 900,000 people living with the condition. By then, many of you watching this will be in your 60s, 70s, 80s or older. So today, Alzheimer's Australia would like to share with you what we know about brain health and what you can do to reduce your risk of dementia.
Okay, so current research indicates that changes in the brain occurring with dementia actually start at least 20 years before the symptoms start to appear. So that might sound a bit depressing, but in fact it's good news, because what it's telling us is that there are certain things that we can do in our current lifestyle in terms of positive brain health that can potentially reduce the risk of dementia. So we can all do something to actually control our brain health. And there's no need for expensive, sophisticated brain training programs or medications. Now, you're probably doing a lot of these things already that I'm going to touch on today, but you might pick up a few ideas. So I'm going to talk about the word neuroplasticity. I'm sure you've all heard the word, haven't you? Okay. So it's now widely accepted that the brain continues to grow new cells and connections called synapses. And researchers found that this growth of new neurons and increase in connections can be enhanced by thinking, complex mental activities and enriching environments. Now, there were some studies done with mice, and we always study mice before we study humans, but anyway, so these mice were in what's called enriching environments. So there are larger cages, lots of toys, mazes, tunnels, running wheels, and a lot of other mice for interaction. And these mice showed improved performance on almost any test of memory, agility, problem solving, and reaction to stress because they were in those environments. And in a 12-month period, this is absolutely amazing to believe, it increased the numbers of brain connections by an average of 200 to 300%. 300% in 1 year. Okay. So, from this data, by keeping mentally active, physically and socially active, we can build up a reserve or a buffer of brain cells and brain synapses, so that if we do happen to get a disease like dementia, we can maintain our cognitive functioning for much longer than might otherwise have been the case. I want to talk about a part of the brain called the hippocampus. People heard of the hippocampus? Okay. It's deep in the brain, but it's an important part of the brain for processing memory. Now, as we get older, our hippocampus shrinks. That's just the nature of things. But it leads to impaired memory. So that's when you have that sort of tip of the tongue experience where you can't quite remember things. That's just about getting older. But it also increases the risk of dementia. Now, hippocampus and the temporal lobe volumes are larger in very fit older adults. So physical activity can actually increase hippocampal blood transfer. Now, there was a study in 2010 that showed that participating in aerobic exercise, like 40 minutes of very brisk walking 3 times a week for 1 year, increased the size and volume of the hippocampus part of the brain necessary for memory processing. And this study of 120 adults, 60 were in the very aerobic group, and the other 60 were in a stretching program. And the people in who were in the aerobic exercise group showed a significant increase in the volume of their hippocampus, whereas the stretching group displayed a decline in that area. So aerobic exercise is effective in reversing hippocampal volume loss, which happens with late adulthood. And the other study there in the California Berkeley University from 2005 to 2011, over a 6-year period, aimed to assess the association between cognitive and physical activity and brain deposits of a protein called amyloid. Now, the frequency of cognitive stimulation throughout life, and this was, assessed over their lifetime in terms of things like reading books and newspapers, writing letters, emails, going to the library, playing games, being involved in group activities and so on. The findings showed that participants engaging in high levels of cognitive stimulation prevented or slowed the deposition of amyloid. Now, amyloid is a brain protein that influences the onset of Alzheimer's disease. So these people who had the high level of cognitive and physical activity actually reduced that presentation of amyloid. Keep hitting the wrong button. Okay. Now, I want to talk briefly about some statistics about dementia. And firstly, the risk of dementia increases with age, but it's not a normal part of ageing. 1 in 10 people over the age of 65 have dementia, but 9 in 10 don't. 1 in 3 people over the age of 85 have dementia, but 2 in 3 don't. So, what can we do to reduce the risk of dementia? We know broadly there are 3 things. The first is look after your heart health. The second is look after your body. And the third is look after your brain. And I'm going to talk about each of these. So firstly, your heart. So there's a strong connection between the health of your heart and the health of your brain. So what's good for your heart is good for your brain. It's as simple as that. But when it comes to the heart, there are other things that you can look at. So we're going to watch this little clip here.
What's the link between heart health and dementia?
We find that a lot of vascular risk factors or risk factors for heart disease also increase our risk of dementia as we get older. And so controlling these improves our health and reduces our risk of not only heart disease, but also reducing our risk of dementia.
So how do we manage these vascular risk factors?
So first of all, it's important to have a good relationship with your GP. And then they can check, based on your family history and your lifestyle, what your risk factors are. They'll start by checking your blood pressure. They might check your cholesterol levels, check your weight, and check your sugar levels.
How often should I have my blood pressure checked?
In general, every adult should get their blood pressure checked probably around every 2 years.
Is there anything else we can do to manage vascular risk factors?
Once we know, for example, if we have high cholesterol or high blood pressure, then we can take lifestyle intervention approaches and also, if required, medication to get things under control. The most important thing is that you discuss this with your GP.
How important is it to have good body weight?
Having a high BMI or being obese increases your risk of dementia. As well as that, having a low BMI or being dangerously underweight also increases your risk of dementia. The relationship for this is strongest in our middle age, and it's lost as we get a bit older. So it's important that throughout our lifetime that we do assess our weight and try to maintain it in a healthy range. Good, and your body mass index is in the healthy weight range for your age, which is good.
Good to know. And just how bad is smoking for dementia risk?
Smoking is another significant risk factor for dementia. We know that it's bad for us for heart disease and for cancer, but also smoking is a high risk factor for cerebrovascular disease and, once we get older, dementia. The risk of dementia from smoking goes away after you stop. So it's one thing that we can do to make a difference to reduce our risk for the future.
What about type 2 diabetes? I read that's also a risk factor.
If you have diabetes in your middle years, you're twice as likely to develop dementia by the time you get older. So it's critical that you do get checked out for it, and if you have any risk of diabetes, then that you intervene to reduce these potential effects.
So as we've heard, one of the biggest issues affecting our heart health is cigarette smoke. A review of University of California found that nearly 14% of all Alzheimer's disease cases worldwide were potentially attributable to cigarette smoking. And the same research found that if you actually gave it up, it reduced the risk. Now, giving up smoking isn't easy. We all know that people who've tried to do it, and it takes many attempts, but people can get support from organisations like Quitline, and I'm sure the GP can provide some support as well. As I've already said, it's important to have regular checkups with your GP, and you actually saw that happening in the video clip. So the GP can check these things: your cholesterol, your blood pressure, your body weight and your blood sugar. And all of these things we know, if they're kept in check, can reduce the risk of dementia. So what about your body? Let's find out how to look after your body.
New research shows there's even more you can do to reduce your risk of dementia. 1, keep your heart healthy, but 2, keep your body healthy. Of course, the two are closely related. Keeping in good physical shape tends to keep your heart in good shape too. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise really. It's not like our bodies are made of separate systems. We're an integrated whole, and a remarkably good integrated whole at that. When you exercise your legs by jogging, for example, you're also exercising your heart and vascular system, which has to pump blood faster. We all know that exercise is good for our health and may even make us live longer. But now there's another reason to do it. It could reduce your risk of getting dementia. And studies have shown that all kinds of exercise helps, from running to walking, even doing vigorous housework. Also on the topic of body, your diet. It turns out that the food you eat also affects your risk of developing dementia. Makes you wonder, is there some kind of superfood that will dramatically reduce your risk? Well, no, there's not. There's no magic food bullet. Again, it's the usual suspects. Plenty of legumes, fruit and vegetables. Eat a reasonable amount of oily fish. Try to avoid too much saturated fat in dairy products and meat.
So we've heard a bit about the importance of physical activity, and we know that high intense physical activity can increase the size of certain brain regions and stimulates growth of neurons. And here are some tips for the sorts of physical activities that might be really helpful. Plenty of aerobic exercise, resistance activities, and stretching, Pilates, yoga, those sort of flexible balance activities. We can do it from 150 to 300 minutes a week. That'll keep us in pretty good shape. Now, there was a study that found that the 25% reduction in physical inactivity, in fact, prevented nearly 1 million cases of Alzheimer's disease worldwide. And when it comes to eating, as it said in the clip, eating those sort of good healthy foods like the Mediterranean diet, intake of fruit, vegetables, fish, that sort of thing can reduce the risk of dementia. Now alcohol, that's an interesting one, because it's actually some evidence suggests that moderate alcohol consumption is a protective factor against dementia. But of course, you know, not too much of it really is the principle. So the national guidelines of 2 standard drinks a day is pretty good, and having a few days without any alcohol at all is good too. So what about your brain? It's about social engagement. That's the really important thing. We won't show that video clip because we run out of time, but basically it's important to challenge your brain with activities and social interactions that are complex, varied, done frequently and are fun. Okay, they're the sort of the key factors. And there was actually a study done of 22 studies which included 29,000 people, and these people who had higher level of mental activity in terms of the sort of education they had, the complex jobs and how long they worked for, actually had a 46% lower chance of developing dementia than people with lower complex mental activities. So it actually is a key factor. So there are 5 things that you can do to maximise your brain health, and in the handout in your packs, it lists the five different things you can do. It's basically look after your heart, look after your brain, look after your body, and keep yourself active. Now there's actually an app that you can get on your phone called Brainy App, and there's information in the pack about it as well. You can download it, you can check your own rating, and they'll give you updates and you can see information. So I did the test recently. I've been told I've got to take up a new hobby. Okay. All right. And if you've got any other questions about this or any other information, I'm going to talk a bit later about carers. Alzheimer's Australia National Dementia Helpline, 1800 100 500. It's a great number to know because you can call it. It's free, it's confidential, and we can help you out with anything. Thank you very much.